Hi there. Later, Lorde clarifies her gender identity. First though, a gay man spending the next week climbing the 7 highest mountains in Ireland for charity. Jack Fitzgerald's raising money for 1 in 4, which supports adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse like him. He tells Radio Kerry the counselling he received from the organisation finally got him to open up.
I would let people in a little bit, but I didn't disclose about any of the abuse until I was about 24, 25. I was constantly protecting myself, not allowing myself to actually freely say what was happening to me and just carrying all of it on my own, which I don't have to do anymore. And that has been an absolute game changer.
Jack will scale a mountain a day, joined along the way by friends, family and supporters. If you want to donate, there's a link in our show notes. At least 10 arrests in Russia after anti-LGBTQ+ police raids on book publishers. All to do with the country's law that bans queer propaganda and labels the non-existent LGBT movement as extremist. Those held are accused of publishing literature with queer themes. Anyone convicted could be jailed for up to 12 years. More than 1 million signatures for a petition calling for a ban on conversion practices in the European Union. Only 8 out of its 27 nations have fully outlawed attempts to change a person's sexuality or gender identity. Passing 1 million signatures means the European Commission now has to provide a detailed response. After that UK Supreme Court ruling a woman's defined by biological sex, a crowdfunder for a legal challenge is going great guns. It's now almost at its target of £425,000. The Good Law Project believes the UK's breaching the Human Rights Act and the European Convention of Human Rights. A link to the crowdfunders in our show notes. And Lorde has been clarifying her gender identity. The singer says she's a woman, except for the days when she's a man, still uses she/her pronouns, but describes herself as in the middle where gender's concerned. No time to tell you that. The new Pope says marriage is between a man and a woman. My husband must be a figment of my imagination then. And European Testing Week's underway, raising awareness of the benefits of early testing for HIV and hepatitis. Hi there. Later, has anyone seen the Beardmobile? First though, a memorial to the queer victims of the Nazis during World War II has been unveiled in Paris. It's a massive 3-ton steel star close to the Bastille by artist Jean-Luc Verner. The monument also remembers all LGBTQ+ people persecuted throughout history. Bubbles were part of the ceremony, courtesy of drag performers, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
May our holy bubbles, like messengers of freedom, joy and equality, dance in the air like liberated souls dance in Paradisco.
Historians reckon between 5,000 and 15,000 people in Europe were sent to concentration camps by the Nazis for being homosexual. Next, a man's charged after weeks of homophobic and racist vandalism in Sydney, Australia. Among 53 incidents, a swastika was spray-painted over a sign for an LGBTQ+ venue. 21-year-old Felix Kira, who performed a Nazi salute at a transgender pride march last November, faces 12 months in jail, an $11,000 fine, or both. Serbian footballer Nemanja Matic really wants you to know he's not a queer ally. The Lyon midfielder's covered up an anti-homophobia message on his shirt during a game and could now be facing a substantial ban. He posted lots of photos on social media showing it off because he's a pathetic little bigot. Apple's been fined 7.5 million rubles by Russia for violating its LGBT propaganda law. All we know is there were 3 supposed offences, but there's no other details. This as Russia also bans Amnesty International after the human rights group spoke out against the country's anti-queer legislation. And a reward of £10,000 of glitters up for grabs for the safe return of the Beardmobile. The Big Gay Mobile Performance Unit, a truck with pink eyelashes, has been stolen from Philadelphia's Bearded Ladies Cabaret. It's a mainstay of LGBTQ+ events in the US city. The drag troupe's also offering an alternative reward of turning you gay if you're not already. Painless and fun, they promise. No time to tell you that. A man who saw Kylie's gig in Glasgow in Scotland says she's went woke and all gay. Didn't get @Brian1223753 the extra Twitter followers who he's clearly after though. Still stuck on 25. Oh. And Alexander Skarsgård and Pedro Pascal have shared a kiss at the premiere of kinky queer biker film Pillion. Hi there. Later, a rainbow road for Washington, D.C. First though, TikToker Taylor Bird, aka Sweet Tea Taylor.
There's a creator on this app talking about how God delivered her from homosexuality, and I have an opinion that nobody asked for, but I'm going to give it to you.
So this other TikToker he's referring to reckons you can pray the gay away. And Taylor, who had a very religious upbringing, says, spoiler alert, that approach doesn't work.
I spent years, and I do mean years, begging God to take away the queerness, begging God to rid me of the homosexual lifestyle. And guess what? He never did. And then one day it dawned on me. God is not going to fix something that ain't broken.
And he's got this message for the TikToker who's been talking out of their rump.
I have no sympathy for this kind of rhetoric, and I never will. Your entire religion, the books, the songs, the poetry, it all boils down to one simple rule. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you can't do that, shut up. Have a blessed day.
The video by Taylor, who's from Alabama in America, has had nearly 2 million views. People could be asked to prove their biological sex by the likes of hospitals and sports clubs in the UK. The Equality and Human Rights Commission's published an updated code of practice. A public consultation's begun on the guidance, says any request to prove gender should be made in a sensitive way which doesn't cause discrimination or harassment. Sure, that'll be fine. Next claims a new law in Peru targeting sexual violence against children undermines transgender rights. It's got restrictions on access to public bathrooms based on biological sex, so trans people can't use those that reflect their gender identity. Human Rights Watch says the law turns child protection into a pretext for discrimination and repression. Hard-right opinion website Spiked is describing transgender children as the must-have accessory for A-list celebs. There's an article full of intellectual incontinence prompted by Erin De Niro, Robert's daughter, coming out as trans. The piece on the Hard Right Opinion website, which doesn't like being called hard right, also takes a pop at gay surrogacy. A group of queer climbers and allies have hung a massive transgender pride flag in the middle of the famous El Capitan rock formation. Trans is Natural says it was an act of solidarity and resistance. They hung the flag 1,500 feet up El Capitan in Yosemite in the US. And Washington DC's now got a rainbow road to mark World Pride there. It's being described as the longest LGBTQ+ mural in history, at over half a mile long. More than 120 volunteers have made it happen. The road's where the World Pride Parade starts on June the 7th. Hi there. Sorry we couldn't bring you a regular Pride Daily yesterday. I'll explain at the end. Later, some queer fish. First though, a ban on the use of government money to fund gender-affirming care has been passed by right-wing lawmakers in America. Republicans have snuck this in through a late-night amendment to what's being crassly referred to as the Big Beautiful Bill. I think I was chatting to him on Grindr. Originally, the ban was only on funding trans healthcare for young people. Not a done deal though. Despite being passed by the US House of Representatives, it now moves to the Senate, where politicians will push for changes.
Once the Senate acts, then the House has to come back, and if anything is different, they have to repass that legislation because, of course, both chambers have to pass identical bills. So there's still a lot of runway left, a lot of work left to do to get this through.
Garrett Watson from the Tax Foundation. The bill only passed by one vote. Next, a ruling in Italy. Both women and a lesbian couple can register as a child's parents on a birth certificate. The Constitutional Court says you can't restrict it to only the biological mother in families with same-sex parents who've gone through IVF, so medically assisted pregnancies. Queer advocates calling it a historic day for civil rights in Italy. And to end the week, some queer fish. Bristol Aquarium in the UK is going to be celebrating Pride Month with a special event. It'll highlight species that challenge traditional gender roles, such as fish that change sex or have non-binary traits. The Sunset Seas Night will also flag up the parallels between marine life and the spectrum of LGBTQ+ identities. And there'll be cocktails, so I'm in. No time to tell you that. International Mr. Leather's underway in Chicago. Washington DC Black Pride starts today. And Pansexual and Panromantic Awareness and Visibility Day is tomorrow. Right then, sorry again that we weren't here yesterday. My stepdad, Terry, has had a tough few years with his health. He took ill again last week and we lost him early yesterday morning, which is why there was an emergency episode. I feel rubbish, but it is good to have the distraction of having this to work on. So, today's edition of Pride Daily is dedicated to Terry Finity. Nanette, God bless, and thank you. I'm Kev McGrath. See you next week.